Today's guest teaches kids.
Oh, I didn't know where that was going at first.
But now I know. We're introducing the guest.
I know.
Tyler, you met Char.
Yeah, so when we were at the Festal Recharged event over in Lebanon, I met her. I was unaware that she was going to be a podcast guest, and Doug was like, "Oh, Char's here. We're recording a podcast with her." And I was like, "Who?" So I met her, and I didn't know who she was. Full disclosure, but she has a really good personality. She's very bubbly, confident, funny, and I just really connected with her right away and was like, I'm super excited to have this woman on the podcast. And I didn't realize that today was her day. It came up and I was like, oh, this is a nice, pleasant surprise. So she's really fun. She's very authentic. She is very, very passionate about what she does. She is a mom of 4. She left her corporate job and she is a maker now. Her goal was to create a living making sawdust, and she's doing that, and she's opening that door into that scene and that space for a lot of people who are not necessarily the typical people within the industry or within that space. So it's a really good podcast. She has really good intentions. She's super kind. She's very, very passionate, and I think that you guys will really enjoy it.
This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. Andersen is dedicated to designing and manufacturing products that are strong, reliable, and ready to perform. And they validate that by testing and testing and testing again until they know their windows and doors perform to their high standards.
They take the time to validate the performance of their materials as well as the performance of the fully assembled products, which we saw firsthand when we visited them recently. They test their products to failure, not just to pass, meaning they test beyond the threshold required by the industry because they want to know they're supplying a product that will perform in the most extreme conditions.
And fun fact, we actually recorded some of their impact testing, which was wild.
Yes.
That video is going to be live soon, so we'll share that when it comes out. And if the products withstand Andersen's best-in-class tests, well, then you can be confident that they will withstand the test of times for your clients. Visit andersenwindows.com for more information. This podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend. Running a custom home building business can be chaotic, stressful, and demanding. You're not alone.
As a business owner, you manage multiple projects at a time, large budgets, a variety of subs, and needy clients. But it doesn't have to be complicated.
If you're feeling overwhelmed in your business, construction management software like Buildertrend is exactly what you need.
Buildertrend helps you keep track of all your projects in one simple place. Once you're on board with the platform, you'll be able to streamline your processes, efficiently manage all aspects of your job, and improve communication with your subs and clients.
To learn more about how Buildertrend can help you work simpler, go to buildertrend.com/MC Homebuilders. Char, nice to meet you.
Didn't we meet?
I met you. I met
you.
You
met Tyler.
We met at well, I mean, maybe Nick met you. I can't say if Nick met you or not, but I met you at the festival event.
Yeah.
I wasn't at the festival event. Did we meet somewhere else?
No, we didn't.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, man, I hate when people do that because now I feel so bad.
I hate when people do it too because I'm like, I was probably the only like black person there. So you can't like forgive me. I like woodworking things. I'm like, come on, guys.
I unfortunately was not able to attend the festival event, but I heard it was great. Is it pronounced Char or Char?
Char.
Char. Well, nice to meet you, even though you thought we already met. That's okay.
Nice to meet you too. I'm trying not to glow.
What'd you do with the picture that you took of us? I never saw it. Did you save it? Is it this wallpaper on your phone?
Yes, it's in my favorites. I saved it so that when this podcast comes out, I can post it.
All right, I'm just checking.
No, trust me. I have I'm up to 41,000 photos and you're in there.
Of me?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I've been stalking you, so you know.
I don't even know if I have 41,000 photos of myself.
I have a shrine.
How many are in the shrine?
In my closet. and I've been waiting for this day for
Let's
so long.
let's get this out into more of a main area. I'm not in love with the closet idea. I'm thinking like maybe the foyer.
Well,
I have 100,000 photos on my phone.
I'm
That
married and I don't want my husband to know
All
about
right.
you.
Smart,
So
smart.
there's
how
that
do you
part.
wait? How do? Oh,
You
you have
click on
100,000
I have
photos on your phone.
100,021.
How much storage do you have?
I guess a lot.
You must have the big. I have 25,000 photos.
Well, it also goes on like the cloud.
Tyler,
So
that's so many photos.
I just never delete them. They go back a long time. I think I started deleting them at one point on my phone, and then it was taking so long that I was like, whatever, I'll just buy more storage. But I'm pretty sure it's all in the cloud because Rachel lost all of our photos of Tilly when she was younger on a phone because we didn't have them backed up, and she
Oh
was
no.
so distraught about it that she was just like, I'm getting all the photos forever, so we don't delete photos anymore.
There you go.
I don't
Um,
blame you.
so Shar, we met at the Festival Recharged event. I was unaware that you were going to be on the podcast, and I think Doug let me know. You remember Doug?
Yep.
He's our producer. Um, you had a lot of energy. You were very spunky. You were, I believe, the only black woman there.
There was one other, Annette.
Okay, there was one other. I don't know if I met her. I would.
She's an amazing maker. You got to have her on.
I don't think. I don't. Was she there both days, or was she just there for the competition?
No, she was there both days.
Oh yeah, I never met her.
Yeah, she's amazing.
What's her name?
Annette, her handle is I think 513 Woodworks.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, she's yeah, 513 Woodworks. She is a really an amazing maker.
That's cool. So yeah, so Doug let me know that you were going to be on the podcast. So I spoke with you quickly. Um, you very high energy, excellent at the back and forth banter. Um, but you told me which struck me as interesting. I asked you what you do, and you said that you were a teacher. And I've done a little bit of stalking myself, and I realized that you are a teacher, a maker, a mother, a speaker, a student. How do you make time for everything that you're doing these days?
A little mix of Xanax and Adderall. Wait,
That's
are we
not bad.
recording this? No.
Yeah, this is
Fine.
live.
No. How do I make time? I quit my day job without a plan B and decided to figure out a way to make this work.
So
And
just no choice.
yeah, kind of no choice. I'm a ladder climber, so I'm just like I can't sit at home and do nothing all day. So then I'll be a lame housewife. No, I'm sorry. Shout out to the housewives. But it's
I
just
don't think
not
a
my
lot of
thing.
housewives listen to this. So
It just wasn't my thing. So I was like, okay, corporate America, not for me. So we should backtrack and talk a little bit about my grand exit from corporate America, right?
yeah,
So
Hold on, let's go back further. We'll
okay,
get to your grand exit. What you're in Atlanta now?
yes.
Did you grow up in Atlanta?
No, I grew up in Compton. Have
Oh,
you seen that
damn.
movie, Straight Outta Compton?
I haven't. It's on my list.
You got to see it. You
It's
have.
good?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yes. The best people came from the hood.
Damn.
Well, you know who Ice
I
Cube
think
is, right?
yeah.
You know
Yeah.
who NWA is.
Yep.
My homies.
Really?
Yes.
Why aren't they on the podcast
Do you?
too?
I can. Let me call.
Wait, so how long did you live in Compton for?
17 years.
So you went to high school in Compton?
I went to no. Oh my gosh, no. I went to high
What?
school on the beach in
Jeez.
Torrance,
Oh.
California. No.
Oh.
No, I left the hood. So I'm a product of private school education. I went to Catholic high school. You know what they say about Catholic girls. I'm not Catholic, but I went to private school. So I left like the hood and I went to school. I was just in a melting pot at the time. LA was it was very diverse. It wasn't as segregated as it is now. There wasn't as much gentrification as there is now. So I had the privilege of growing up with like all of these different races. My sister, my half sister, is half Filipino. So I'm like immersed in so much different culture coming from that area. So yeah, I left when I was 17 because I knew no one in LA. Sorry, high school friends. No one was really going to do anything great. Like everybody wanted to stay there. And I'm just like, I feel like I'm suffocating in this huge city. I have to get out and I have to go as far away as possible. So Paris was my first option, was to go to the university, the American University in Paris, because I had been studying French for several years and I spent some time over there before my graduation from high school. And I missed the deadline. Their deadline is 18 months, whereas like undergrad here in the States is 9 months. So I had missed the deadline by like a couple months. So then I said, okay, let me go as far away from LA as possible. So I looked at Georgia. Atlanta was a lot like LA. I'm
Oh, I
like,
thought you were going to say France. Atlanta's like the American France.
right. I mean, it was as close as I could get. I think I continued my French studies in undergrad for a little while. I'm not going to give on hope that I am going to move to France one day. So if you know any French speaking people, 'cause no one here really speaks French, but
I
um,
don't.
so yeah, so I ended up in Atlanta at 17 and I didn't know it got cold here in LA. It doesn't get cold. It didn't get cold. I didn't own a jacket, so I was like really cold. All I had was flip flops and tank tops. I'm like, what happened to hot Atlanta? So my parents had to send me like a jacket and everything. So
Wait, what did you study in school?
public relations. I, I studied public relations. That was after my first major wasn't available, which was supposed to be anthropology. I'm
What?
I'm obsessed with like ancient Egyptian civilizations. So it was either going to be archaeology or anthropology. But
And what did you think you were going to do with those degrees? Or did you not think that far ahead?
oh no, I just wanted to. I love history. I'm a lover of history. So I figured maybe you know, be a historian or move to Egypt, study the ruins there. That was my original plan. But then I went to a PR meeting and I'm like, oh, these people are cool. They do all the things I like to do. They like to talk and connect the dots and plan things and just make things work together. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll give PR a try. And even though I am not directly working in PR, I see that I'm using my degree to market myself as the wooden maven. It's
That's
working, right?
good.
I'm
I
on
mean,
your podcast. I'm on the best podcast ever.
Oh,
it,
there we go. That was what I was looking for.
I made
it
it. I'm out. We're done.
it's it's obviously working. It's to go from Compton to Atlanta and college and then doing what you're doing now. I understand it's been a pretty logical progression. Um, but it took a while getting there. At what point did you start taking up woodworking? It was after college when you told me that you built your first bed.
Yes, it was after college. You know that good old story: champagne taste, beer money,
Hmm.
Yep.
student loan debt. Biden, where you at? I need you to pay these loans off. Um, and I had this apartment in the nice part of town, but I didn't have any money. And I wanted this really nice bed. And I'm just like, how am I gonna get this bed? I've got this internship, it's paying me like $8.25 an hour. And I took like 5 trips to the store. And finally, on like the fifth trip, I'm literally on the floor underneath the bed, like, I could probably make this, right? Like, I'm pretty awesome. I could build this. So I got out my Razor flip phone and I took a picture and I sent it to my uncle who's a carpenter. I'm like, Uncle Greg, I need to build this bed. Where do I start? So he's like, go to Home Depot, tell them to cut, the wood to length or whatever. So I like stuffed it in my Ultima, and it took me 3 months to like build this bed. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I didn't have any tools or money to buy tools. So I borrowed a drill from my boss. I don't even think it was a name brand drill. All I remember was it was in like a blue case. So I borrowed a drill from him. I brought a $10 battery powered screwdriver, and it took me 3 months in my apartment to build this bed, like after work, because I didn't know what I was doing. YouTube was like 2 years old by then. So imagine what was on there. Nothing, right? So I'm just like, we're going to figure it out. But I finished this bed. It was awesome. I slept on the bed for 7 years, right? Until I moved in with my husband. So that sort of like bit the bug for me. I'm like, wait a minute. So you mean I could take a dead tree and I can make something out of it? Let's see. You just glue two pieces of wood together. So everything I made for like the next couple of years was really crappy. Butt joints. It's awful.
How was the bed?
The bed was great. Never fell out the bed. Nothing on the bed. It was broke. The only reason why we got rid of the bed was, I mean, if you want to say I was an adult, I was an adult. My husband's like, yeah, we're not sleeping on this bed. I mean, he's like older than me, and he was already established. So,
So it didn't look like the bed from the store.
oh, it looked just like the bed from the store.
You think so?
Go to thewoodenmaven.com.
I mean,
I saw
if
the
your
bed.
husband didn't want to sleep on it, what's the problem?
Okay, so here's the thing. There's two types of people in the world. There's people that make things, and then there's people that pay other people to make things or buy them from the store, right? So people who make things, we have a certain level of appreciation for imperfection. People who go and buy things expect perfection, right? So opposites attract, right? My husband is, something breaks. I'm like, don't worry about it, babe. I got it. I'll fix it. He's like, no, we're going to call someone. I'm like, yeah, it's like $20,000. He's like, that's okay. We got to pay somebody to fix it. I'm like, I could fix it for free. I mean, he's thinking back to that one time I tried to do a plumbing project and the wall fell and blah, blah, blah. We won't talk about that. There's some things I'm just not allowed to do in the house. I'm not allowed to do any plumbing work. He said no electrical work, but I may or may not have already done it. So yeah, we just go.
So the bed in the store was an imperfect bed as well.
It was a platform bed. I mean, it wasn't. I don't know, restoration hardware quality.
Yeah.
It was from a store that doesn't even exist anymore.
You said you went back to that store, and I read this story on your website too. But you said you went back to that store 5 times. How many? Like in your story, you talk about like how you were hoping money would fall out of the sky and you'd be able to afford the bed. But what was the reason that you were really going back? Because you were in love with it and you just wanted to see it.
I manifest things, right? I believe whatever you focus on, you will get. Whatever your heart's desires are, you will have. Like, I believe that 1,000%. And yes, like, I believe that someone was going to go, oh, it's on sale for like 75% off. Or like, gosh, you look like a poor college student. Do you need help?
Yeah, you're just looking for like, you wanted it so bad that if you kept going there, something would materialize out of it.
And I know that sounds crazy to most people, but when I tell you, like, I have that kind of life where things like that do happen to me, that if something like that happened, it wouldn't be weird because things like that just happen to me in my life. I feel very like blessed and fortunate that I have that, I don't know, whatever you call it, energy or something. Je ne sais quoi? I don't know. I don't know, but it's something.
I like the fact that you got to the point where you were taking pictures with your phone and then you reach out to Uncle Greg and said, because when I had first read it, I thought Uncle Greg came and helped you build it. But the fact that he told you to go to Home Depot and have them cut the lumber there, I mean, that's resourceful. Where it's like he's, and it might sound simple, but I think a lot of people automatically assume, like, especially people that are brand new into this, right? Like yourself was, like, you don't have a miter saw, you don't have a skill saw. You could buy a hand saw, but it'd be a pain in the butt, and you would probably not get a very square cut, you know. And instead you're using the resources that were available to you, which every Home Depot has a cut station. If you tell them, hey, I need this piece at 86 and 7/8 of an inch long, they're going to mark it and they're going to cut it, and hopefully they're getting it at 86 and 7/8. But you can double check with the tape measure that's sitting right next to the saw if you need to. But the fact that he, you reached out to him for essentially advice, and he gave you real advice that would get you a result immediately, and then everything else you ask your boss for the drill and things like that. It makes you resourceful. And the reason I'm calling attention to it is because, recently I was chatting with a friend of mine that wants to start a site work company. And the reason he has yet to do so is because he's like, I can't afford the equipment yet. And it's like, well, why do you need to afford the equipment? He goes, dude, I can't own a site work company without having the equipment. Like, and I remember years ago in commercial construction, we worked with a site work company. They owned 0 pieces of equipment and they rented everything. And so when they had a job, the rental company would drop off the machine. It would say right on the side, United Rentals. They'd drop it off. It would be topped off with fuel. The guy would roll up in his pickup truck, get out, hop in the machine, do the work, get paid. Rental company would come back through, pick up the equipment, bring it back, service it, and wait for the next call. And and I think that oftentimes that is what is limiting people from like taking that first step. Where it's like if you called your Uncle Greg and he said, all right, what I want you to do is I want you to go to aisle 16. I want you to buy a $500 miter saw. That's going to use to cut the wood. Then I want you to go over here and buy a $200 drill and make sure you get the $28 countersink kit. Next thing you know, it's like $1,000 in tools. Like the bed was 900. It's like, I'm not, I can't, it doesn't make sense anymore. But instead it's the mindset of being resourceful.
Absolutely. 100%. And I didn't know at the time that the seeds were being planted, that the pavement was being laid for me to have this story and this testimony to share with people 20 years later. For people who want to start a woodworking business or want to build something, and they go, oh, you see everybody on Instagram and social media, we try to like one up each other. Like, remember when lasers first came out and everybody had a glow forge? And everyone's like, oh, and then the thunder laser came out and they're like, dang, now I feel like I have to get a thunder laser. Then it was like CNCs. It's like we have to one. I'm like, you really don't need that. And then I reference the past like 15 years of my journey where I didn't have those things, but I was still making. I found other places, and I talk a lot about the makerspace that I'm a part of. And helping people to get a makerspace started in their community. And they're like, I don't know where to start. I say half of the things we have been donated. Some of the things we have are from the 70s. We have a jointer that was purchased at Sears and Roebuck, a store that doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
But that jointer is fire. Don't ask me how to fix it, but but it's still a good jointer. So I'm 100% like happy to hear that story about your friend. It's like, look, I want to do this. I'm not going to let anything stop me. I'm not going to let the lack of resources, the lack of tools, the lack of knowledge, my gender, my background, my culture. I just want to do it, and I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter if it doesn't mean anything to anybody else. It means something to me to start something. And I'd rather start now than in a year have a regret and say, dang, I wish I would have done this last year.
Yeah. So when you started your woodworking, it was based out of necessity with this bed, and that sparked this itch for you with woodworking. But you went off and got a corporate job. How long did that last for you?
Too long.
Too long?
No.
Were you still doing woodworking while you were doing the corporate job too?
Yeah.
Cool.
So I was in corporate America for about 15 years. Even though I didn't work for a PR agency, I went into the event side of it. So I did a lot of nonprofit and community relations. And then I moved on to convention centers, managing trade shows. I think the largest one I did was like 90,000 people. So I did that, and then I managed facilities. So everything has something to do with community events and facility events. And I'm like, I got so high on that corporate ladder. Before I left, I had a corner office. I had a staff. I was a director. I was making good money, great benefits. Everything was good on paper. But I'm like sitting in a meeting thinking, if I have to sit in one more meeting, somebody's going to get it, because I could not sit at this table and have a meeting about a meeting again. And just the bureaucracy that takes place in corporate America and office politics, I knew it wasn't for me. But this whole time, I'm like, I'm making stuff, right? Like, instead of buying, handbags and shoes and getting my nails done and buying makeup and clothes, I'm trying to buy all the tools that I can. I mean, they were cheap tools, they were inexpensive. My first set of tools was a 7-inch Craftsman battery powered circular saw and the drill and the staple gun. It came in a set from Sears. I think it was like $99 or something.
Yeah.
And at the time, I'm just like, I'm broke now. But whatever I could buy, I'm like in the garage, just putting stuff together. And of course, my family supported me. And I'm like, you don't have to pay me for this. They're like, no, 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 no. We want to help you. I said, no, you're helping me perfect my craft, because my house can only hold so much raggedy furniture. But if just pay for the materials, because I just want to practice. I want to be better. And I loved it so much that I kept trying to figure out a way, in what situation could I just wake up, put on sweats, and make sawdust all day for a living. I can go into that now if you want.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you had, and I don't know the entire evolution of your family. You have 4 kids. All kids are yours?
Some of them I'm 100% sure they're mine, but there's one I'm not so sure where she came from. No,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
they're all
better.
mine.
That's better than me. Okay, so you have 2 older kids, and then you had a set of twins after that.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah. So you left your job after you had the twins?
I went back to work after I had the twins. So my job basically told me that it was too hard for me to do my job with 4 kids. This was in 2015. I'm pretty sure that's like, it was illegal then. I'm definitely sure it's illegal now to tell someone that. But I wasn't, each year we grow in who we are and what we will handle. And, as we age, we tend to care a little bit less about what people say and what they think.
Yeah.
I think I was maybe 30, in my early 30s at the time. So I'm just like, what? So I went back to prove them wrong. I'm like, I could do this job with 4 children. I have support. I have a great husband, great family, friends. We got this. Like, I was born to work. So while I was on maternity leave, they brought in someone else to manage my staff and take care of the campuses that I was overseeing. And when I got back, they were sure I wasn't coming back. So when I showed back up, I found out that they had given this new person my promotion, my 6-figure promotion. And this new person also asked me to move out of my office because my office was bigger than hers. Of course, I said no. And I think I stayed for maybe 5 months until I realized that my mental health was at stake, being in this like toxic workplace, and that proving something to them was no longer worth it for me or for my family. So without any planning or preparation, I came home and I looked my husband in the face, and I'm pretty sure, like, if your wives just came home one day, they were like, I'm quitting my job. Like, you can't quit your job. We have this and this and this. But my husband knew that I had to go. So he says, how long do I have? I said, you got 2 weeks. I said, all right. Turned in my 2-week notice. And that first year was really, really hard for me because I'm used to being around people and being around adults and being home with two babies at the same time it was a lot.
Mhm.
It was a lot, because I had never planned to leave my job. I had never planned to be a stay-at-home mother. Um, but it took about a year for me to see that, again, that whole manifestation thing is real. Um, I said that I just wanted to be a woodworker, and that was it. And in order for me to get there, I should go back a year earlier. In uh, 2014 is when I feel like everything was being set up for this moment, this conversation that we're having right here. The reason why you have me on this podcast. Um, 2014, my oldest kid's school closed after 65 years of being open. They just said, we're closing the school, blah, blah, blah. So we had to find her a new school. She was in private school because you know how I feel about public school. She was in private school, so we had to find her a new school, which I don't know what happened over the past 20 years, but putting your elementary age child in private school is like applying to college now. Observations and letters of recommendation. I'm like, she's 5. She's okay. Uh,
Do you guys live in the city?
yeah, we live in
Yeah.
the
So
city.
that's why you are sending your kids to private school?
Um, I have never experienced public school,
Yeah.
so just observing from the outside, I just didn't think public school was good enough. But guess where they are now?
Public school? I mean, I would just look at it financially. I'm like, New Jersey has good schools. So I'm like, why? My brother sends his kids to private school, and it doesn't make that much sense to me because their public school system is good. And I don't think with the private school that he's sending them to, it's a Catholic school and there's zero diversity. Not that
Mhm.
there's a ton of diversity where we are anyway, but I'm like, I just don't get the benefit of paying what you are per year to send your kids to private school. Unless if you live within the city, I do believe that there's different things that come into play there. But where we are, it's like the public school systems are great.
Yeah, it was a personal choice, and it was a parochial school, which was also important to us,
Yeah.
for our children to have access to that, in addition to our own teachings at home. Um, so we we ended up getting in the lottery at a new school that had not even been built yet, which sounds crazy, but she ended up getting into that school after 3 months. Um, then that summer I started to gain weight, which is, I know, shocking. Most, which isn't, it's strange to me. I'm just one of those people that doesn't gain weight. And, years before, my husband and I decided we were only going to have 2 children. And I don't know, something weird happened. I got pregnant. I'm not sure like how that even transpired. So then I went to the doctor and they were like, we hear 2 heartbeats. I'm like, well, that can't be. Your machine's broken. They're like, no, you're having twins. I'm like, what? And I'm like crying and laughing. They're like, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm not okay. I'm having twins. So yeah, so I'm pregnant with twins, like miracle on top of miracle. Like I said, not supposed to be able to have any more kids, but now I'm having 2 more. No twins in the family. And I got horribly sick. Um, just I won't go into detail, but I got really sick. Lots of hospital stays, lots of home nurses, husbands like 24-hour on the clock, taking care of me and trying to take care of the other 2, and he ends up losing his job. So now he
Oh
has
my
sick wife,
gosh.
2 babies, still have daycare, and now
Be,
he's about to have 4 kids.
be like, we could sell the babies.
You know what? That was on the table. That was on the table. But after like being that sick with
At
them,
least one of them.
I know. But
You have
but
two.
no, the twin thing has paid off. I'll get to that later.
All right.
Are
So
they identical or
they
fraternal?
they're fraternal, but they look just alike.
So, not to interrupt you, but I'm going to interrupt you. My mom, I have 4 siblings. So, there were 3 of us. My oldest brother was 5. And my mom found out she was pregnant. And gave birth to what she thought was her fourth, and the doctor was like, "Oh, this baby's too small." And she's like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "There's another baby in there." So she had 4 and 5 and didn't know she was giving birth to twins until she gave birth to one of them. And they were 6'6" and 7'1".
Oh my gosh.
And she
Oh
did like full term pregnancy, had no idea she was, and ended up giving birth to identical twin boys. So she had 5 kids. My brother wasn't even 6 yet.
God
But we
bless.
went to public school all day. I'm surprised we
Yeah.
even went to school.
Your mom is a champ.
I don't know. I think that they're like insane.
Dang.
Yeah, but so the twin surprise is definitely relatable here. I understand the impact of that.
Yeah, it got real crazy. Well, it got real crazy. It still is real crazy. Um, dang, wow. I couldn't imagine that if I didn't find out like until I was having them. This I would probably be doing this podcast from like an insane asylum in the straight
Yeah.
back. You'd be like, "Sure, are you okay?" Nope, nope. Something real crazy happened to me. Nope, never gonna be okay again. So anyway, all this stuff is going on, right? Have the twins. That was like crazy. We won't go into detail because I'm assuming most people that listen to this podcast are men and they don't want to know the details of how the twins came into this world. Almost didn't make it to the hospital. We'll just say that. It's going to be a home birth, not my plan. Um,
Uh-oh.
so all of this like crazy stuff happened, right? I'd stay home with the twins. And after about a year, I'm just like, okay, I got to build something. And I'm like outside making stuff. And it hits me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, wait a minute. This was the moment that I prayed for, to get up, put on sweats, go outside and make sawdust. Like no expectations, right?
Mm.
But in order to get to this moment, I had to go through all that stuff in 2014 to make me leave my job, because I never would have just left.
Mm-hmm.
It never would have been okay for me to just leave,
Yeah.
right? So I tell people the twins were my ticket out of corporate America, because without them, I probably still be there. So that next year is when it all really started to unfold for me. I found the makerspace. I joined the makerspace here in Atlanta, Decatur Makers, because they had a cabinet size saw stop. And at the time, we had a 2-car garage. I couldn't afford or fit a cabinet size table saw in the garage. So I joined the makerspace and I was there every day. I carried the twins in their car seats. Everybody knew them. I'm like, keep an eye on my babies while I go in the wood shop and cut. And that created tiny woodworkers at that moment. So the twins are now 8. They've turned on the lathe. They know how to use the miter saw. They use the bandsaw. We fight over walnut. I try to tell them the plywood is theirs. The walnut is mine.
Amazing.
They pour epoxy. They taught an epoxy class and they were like 4, because that's been their life. They'll never know that being a female and having all these tools and doing all these things is like, oh my gosh, you're a girl that does this. They don't know that's odd, because that's all they know, right?
I want to know, you said that if it weren't for the twins, you would have never left corporate America. Is that financial handcuffs, so to speak, or just not having um enough courage to step away from that and take another path? Or why would you have not been able to leave corporate America?
Probably both. Um, Probably both. It wasn't until like 2021 that I actually started making an income that almost matched my salary for my corporate job. So it just, I would not have been able to make it make sense. And kudos to the people out there who have a full-time job, plus they're crushing it with some other side hustle. Like, I don't know how they do that. And with children, like, kudos to them. But I know with my full-time job, 4 kids, I wouldn't have time to be the wooden maven.
No, and one of the questions that I had for you in the first place was, and I didn't know your entire story, how you ended up where you are today, and it makes more sense. But I was more under the assumption that you had this itch to get back into woodworking, and you had left work to be a stay-at-home mom, and you chose to partake in woodworking, and it was like, how the hell do you make time where you have a family, 4 young kids, which is over more than a full-time job in and of itself, and it's like, how are you stepping away from all of that and taking time for yourself to do woodworking as a mother, as a wife, as somebody who is taking care of all these other things? And it's like, how the hell do you make time for it? Like, we have 2 kids and my wife works full time, and it's like we don't have time for anything.
The way that I have figured out to make time for everything is to involve my children in all of it. So I'll
Yeah.
give you an
That's a good
example.
point.
I'll give you an example. I'm a brand ambassador for Carhartt. So we're known as the Friends of Carhartt. And I got a call to do a commercial. It was a Mother's Day commercial with Carhartt. And that meant I'm a mom. How do you show your mom is you have kids involved too. So the twins and I flew to North Carolina for 2 days. We filmed this commercial, right? So I am working. I am
Mm.
representing myself as a mother, as a maker and a woodworker, but I'm also able to involve my children. So not only did I get paid, but my children got paid. And I had to set up a Coogan account. That's an account that like child actors get so their parents don't take their money. So I'm able to start building um, funds for them and teaching them at a young age. Okay, yes, please go to college because that's going to be your fallback plan. However, if you have a side hustle or a passion or a dream, or you want to be an entrepreneur, it's not going to look like everybody else's life. You go after it, you earn your own money. And I'm teaching you how to save your own money and not spend it all at an early age. So I involve them with everything. I work with Irwin. They
You
did.
learned those lessons through Britney Spears.
I did. I watched the documentary on Britney, and I was like, okay, let me get my
This is
notebook
this
out.
is important.
Step one, keep clothes on. Check. Step two, not shave head.
You make it sound a lot easier than it is.
Gosh, God bless her. She's poor girl.
So
Um,
you work with Irwin now?
so well, this was I've worked with it. I've worked with a little bit of everybody. So this was like one of my favorite ones. So they have this National Tradespersons Day, right? And Irwin has a car that was racing in the Roval 400 in North Carolina in Charlotte. So they send me this list. Okay, we want you to do this much coverage, stories, posts, reels, et cetera, et cetera. You could bring somebody. So I told my husband, because normally, I don't know about you guys, or if your wives are on social media or not, it's usually one spouse that's always on social media, and then the other spouse is like, you're always on your phone.
Yeah.
And you're like, you don't understand. This is my job. And you're like, how do you, this is not your job. All I see you doing is scrolling, and that's not your job, right? So the best part about this, because I'm always on my phone, but I'm not like, we're scrolling, but we're looking for content. We're looking for
Mm.
ideas. We're seeing what our friends are doing, what's trending. And so my husband went with me on this trip, right? It was sponsored by Irwin. We got a behind the scenes tour of the Chris Bell Racing Station. We got to sit in the pit. We went to the NASCAR museum, and I have this list of what I'm supposed to be doing. And my husband's like giving me like all the space, right? I'm like, babe, hold the camera. I gotta make this real. I have to do this post. So he was seeing in real time what I was doing. And I'm like,
Yeah.
get this check.
Mm.
I got this check from doing this. So he's like, okay, I get it. So everything I do, I try to involve my family. And when I can get them paid, I get them paid. I do a lot of stuff with Carhartt. We did another photo shoot, I don't know, not too long ago. So the kids were on top of it, stand here, stand in this position, they listen. And every company pays differently. Some take 90 days, some write you a check on the spot. Carhartt wrote a check, and I held the check up and I said, this is for your hard work. This is for paying attention, following directions. I took them to the bank, divided it by 4. They put some in their savings. I put some on their card for them to spend. We gave some to the church. And I'm teaching them and showing them how to make money, right? And making it fun. So they won't feel like they're ever working. They'll go harder if they feel like they're not working.
Mhm.
They're free spirits like me. I'm like, you, by looking at me, you would never know, all of these things.
Stop.
Like, oh, she's just a mom with a bunch of kids. She probably sits at home all day watching The View. And I'm like, judge me if you want to.
Did you have somebody who instilled these principles in you when you were younger? Like, did you have somebody that gave you discipline with money and showed you how to work hard, or is this something that you've just wanted to do on your own?
Hmm. I come from a family of makers, people who do things with their hands. My
Mhm.
father, God rest his soul, put me through private school. He used to make furniture out of mirror. So, like mirror dollhouses and like mirror home decor. It was really cool how he made it. I don't know how he made so much money for 18 years to send me to school, but he did. And I watched my mom work really hard. My mom was a loan officer. Um, Throughout my whole life, my younger life. So I watched my whole family work hard. Um, as far as this money thing, I mean, I was the only child, so I was like spoiled. So whatever I asked for, I got. Um, but she always said, make sure you keep your credit good. So I spend a lot of money, but I'm not about to mess up my credit.
Um, so I wanna talk a little bit about the maker space as well. I know we were just digging into that and what that setup and operation looks like for people who are unaware, or don't know what that experience looks like. They feel as though they may not have one in their area. How you found that and what that setup looks like how you become a member of that maker space.
Well, first you send in a letter, and we invite you over. We take you out back, and we jump you in, and then you're in the gang. That's all.
This you brought a lot of Compton
I
with
know,
you.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I forgot. I left the hood back in Cali. Rewind. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's 100% community makerspace. Um, and our story is actually really, really interesting. About 10 years ago, our founder, his name is Lou. He was a dean over at Georgia Tech Institute, which is near my house here in Atlanta. He had this idea of bringing makers together, tinkerers, people who like to do things with their hands, and he's looking for space for this to happen. And he comes across this dilapidated building, which happened to be the gym behind a church. And he talks to the pastor. Hey, what are you guys going to do with that old basketball gym? Oh, we're about to tear it down. The roof is falling in. He goes, hey, we're looking for a space for this thing we want to do. I said, well, I mean, if you guys fix the roof, we'll lease it to you for $1 a year. And you're like, okay, you tell a bunch of makers to fix something. You like put out the bird call. All right, guys. So we did a Kickstarter campaign, repaired the roof. People started donating old tools. They didn't use them anymore, or grandpa gave them to them. Grandpa's not around anymore, whatever. And of course, we were able to buy some things, and we've been through several iterations since our 10-year inception. So now, fast forward 10 years later, we have almost 500 members.
Wow.
We have 24-hour access to the space. So there's a wood shop, there's an electronic shop, we have a welding shed, metalwork, 3D printing. I think we have maybe 6 3D printers, Glowforge, Thunder Laser, and people run their businesses out of this makerspace. We have a lot of people who are on Etsy who a laser engrave or laser cut molds or whatever. So you can come anytime, use any of the tools. Some of them we have classes for, so you have to get signed off on for. So woodshop,
Mm.
yes, a miter saw is a miter saw, but every brand of miter saw operates a little bit differently, right? You turn it on. A DeWalt is different from a Festool, and a Festool is different from whatever, Ryobi. So we give you that training, how to use the tools, how to use the laser, the Glowforge or the Thunder Laser, the welding classes. And then we do a lot of family based things because we are the only family friendly makerspace. A lot of makerspaces are for adults because they think, oh, children can't use these tools, or we don't want this to be like a kid place where everybody's kid is running around crazy painting on the walls. We're like, no, we're there for the community. We're there for family. So we have this family open build night where small kids come in with their parents and we launch rockets made from old Pepsi bottles. And then we just have a general open build night on Wednesdays, 3 Wednesdays out of the month, where you can come in for a tour. If you have something you're working on, you have questions on how to use it, or how to move forward with this project, there's people there. We have a really amazing Slack channel. You drop your cool pictures, your questions, whatever. We communicate with our members that way. We do a lot of community outreach with underserved schools and organizations, bringing them into the space, sharing our knowledge with them. One of the most favorite things that I've got to do with the space. So my involvement with the space is a lot. I sit on the board of directors. I'm the VP of the board. I started teaching there. I love to share my teaching story with you, how this whole teaching thing started. We have a girls maker club, which I'm heavily involved in because I'm a big advocate for having girls in the maker space and in the maker world. But we work with this one organization that is a middle school for refugee girls from Somalia, from Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan. And
What ages?
what ages?
Yeah.
They are between like 11 and 19. This
Okay.
particular school. It's not like a traditional middle school because
Yeah.
there's language barriers and cultural barriers with girls coming from different places around the world. But we had a group of girls come into the space, and this group had only been in the States less than a year. And initially, I was just going to do a demo. This is how you make a bowl on the lathe. And one of the girls asked, can we try? And I, check with the teacher because we have, liability waivers that people sign when they come into the space. And I said, yes, sure, she can try. And after that, they all wanted to try and do this. And I really think that was probably one of the most special moments in my life, was being able to teach these girls who come from these war-torn countries that would never have the opportunity to do something like this in their home country. But I can give this experience to them and introduce this thing to them. So I love the maker space with all of my heart because of what we do for other people and what we offer for other people, and making accessible for so many people who either can't afford tools, don't have access or space to them, or know where to go to learn how to use them. So,
So
Hater Maker.
you one of the things that you had filled out on your form was that you wanted to speak about legacy, and what you're doing with this space and the inclusivity that you have with regard to gender, religion, ethnicity, skin color, age, whatever it may be. That you're including everyone in this. Is this an appropriate time to discuss legacy and what that means to you, if this has something to do with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned before, I am the last person that you would think that does what I do solely based on the way that I look. And that is because the stereotypes that we've been taught about certain people, or the things that you've seen on television, how we are portrayed, how we are supposed to be. I am a Black girl from the hood. So, yes, I'm supposed to have 4 babies, but I'm also supposed to have 4 baby daddies. And I'm not supposed to be college educated. And I want to be the person to help break what other people believe about people that look like me. I have
And
4 children. Go ahead.
why is that so important to you, just in general, and even more so within your space, like the carpentry? Because we would be foolish to not um, acknowledge the fact that, like, there's not a lot of women doing what we do, and there's not a lot of black women doing what we do. So not only not only do I feel this is very important in life and society as a whole, but especially in our space to attract women and black women into our field.
You have to ask yourself, why are you here? What is your purpose for being here, right? Other than to take up space, to be a son, to be a brother, to be a dad, to go to your job. What is your purpose? After you're dead and gone, what are people going to say about you? What are your children going to say about you? What are they going to tell their children about you? And children will change your perspective on everything, right? They will make
Mhm.
you want to be greater. They will make you want to be better and try harder because you want your kids to be proud of you. I want my children to be proud of me. I want mothers to be proud. Um, I want people of color to be proud. I want to give them inspiration and hope because a lot of those things don't always come along with hope, right? If you listen to the
Mhm.
media, I'm not going to go into detail about it, but you know, things are not always trending well for people of color. The world is not trending well for women, right? Or for young people. And if I can give you that little bit of hope, that little bit of inspiration, that little bit of confidence to say, look where I came from and look what I was able to achieve. I didn't achieve it by myself. I had lots of help. I had lots of people believing in me. I had a lot of support and I worked really hard to say, hey, you got this, whatever it is, even if it's not woodworking, whatever it is, you got this, you can do it. Um, Whatever you need to pull out of yourself to make it happen, let's talk about that. Let's figure out what your excuse is for not making it happen. And my lane happened to be woodworking. Woodworking found me. It wasn't, I didn't grow up thinking, oh, I'm going to be a woodworker. I'm like, that
Yeah.
sounds really boring. No, oh my gosh, no. But it
Not
found me.
especially not in Compton.
No,
You can't
not
nah.
no.
Can't walk around like I'm gonna be a woodworker.
They'll be like, "What, homie?" I'm like, "Never mind. Nope, nope. I'm gonna sell the drugs. I got you. Forget the wood. I
Do
bet
you
drugs."
do you think that there's a way, and I look at this right from my point of view and my perception. I'm a middle-aged white male, middle class, like as basic as it can get when you look at it from like a societal perspective. Is there a way to quantify or gauge the challenges that are presented to you as a black woman, whether it's in life or within the field that you're in, that would make it relatable to somebody like me?
No.
And like, see, I think that's where so much of the problem is because like people say they want to help or they want to make a change, but if it's something that is just not like, that's something that I would have trouble relating to because this is just how I was born, the life that I was born into. Like, how how can we make a change? How can I help if I don't fucking know how anyone's feeling? It's so hard.
Right. Well, two things. One, by having me on this podcast, right? And there's many reasons why you have me on here. So that's a step. And it's not like, oh, we're diverse. We got Char. You know, we're
Yeah.
crushing it. It's for other reasons, right? Second thing, workbench conference. Last year, I think, I did a panel on diversity and social media. So I was myself, um, Hispanic lesbian, white lesbian, Asian man, Hispanic woman on this panel. And we didn't know who was going to show up because we're far and few between, but it was standing room only, and the majority of the people at this panel were white.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
that question was, how can we be an ally? And I'm specifically talking about social media. So there's a lot of people who are influencers there. And one of the people on the panel said, when a brand reaches out to you and they say, okay, we have this new campaign, and you know they've probably reached out to 5 or 10 other people, instead of you saying, okay, yes, I'll do it, you say, how many people of color do you have as part of this campaign? That's how you be an ally. If you want to be
Yeah.
a true ally, it's putting your money where your mouth is. Because most people are saying, no, that's more bread for me. I don't want to share with Shar or whomever. Well, then if you don't want to be an ally, then don't pretend to be one. You
Yeah.
know, um, And as sad as it is, the people who have helped me get to the next level in this field have all been white men. Like all of the television deals, all of the
Mm.
flying all over the country, it's like a white man saying, Char, come with me.
Sure. I want to interrupt for a second. Do you think it's unrealistic to think that we will be in a position sometime in the future that we can stop talking about or stop asking the question of how many people of color are in this campaign?
No.
You don't. And because you said something a second ago, that we have you on this podcast for a number of reasons. And truthfully, like for me, like there's no like there and I'm speaking for all of us, like there's no checkbox like, all right, now we're diverse. Like we have a black woman on our podcast. That's not even remotely part of it. And I didn't know who you were prior to getting on this podcast. And I like to think that we have people on this podcast because of what their background is, and that they have a unique story to tell or a unique opportunity to share, or help someone, right? And I've had similar conversations, or people have brought up similar conversations that have worked with me as an employee or as a trade or as a contractor or in the social media side, where they there's that understanding that I'm doing it for a reason, like you said, like I'm trying to be diverse or trying to be, and I don't look at it that way. I'm not looking at it as a box to check. I just like the person, right? I want to work with the person, and I know that there's like it's like a double-edged sword there, because I'm not necessarily doing my part in like making sure that I'm include being more inclusive and more diverse in who is involved in what we're doing. But on the other side, it's like I feel as though I'm trying to just be inclusive by nature. And it's a difficult it's been difficult for me. Like I'm the same as Tyler. I'm a 35-year-old white dude. Like, again, like completely, like, I'm just I'm I want to be helpful. And I want and for me, and in the conversations I've had, I've always done a bad job portraying that or communicating that, because it's always been, this is just who I am. I'm always going to be inclusive. I don't care. I don't care about the color of skin. It's like, if you're coming to me and you're gonna fit the need, what we need as an employee or as a teammate or as a partner, like that stuff doesn't matter to me. But what you're saying is like, we're not there yet, and and unfortunately the world doesn't look at it that way. So rather than being neutral, we need to be more proactive.
It,
You have to be intentional,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And it's harder um to be intentional because some things are so ingrained in us. You're going to naturally navigate to people who are like you,
Mm.
right?
Yeah,
And
and I like
it
I've always hated that argument where it's like, I see people argue. It's like, well, how many black friends do you have? It's like, I don't know, man. Like, I've never counted. I also don't know how many. I don't know how many white friends I have. I don't know how many friends I have. Like, at the end of the day, like, I think what you just said. Like, you have to be intentional. You know, that's the where was I going with that? Like,
it's really hard for people to talk about it too, right? Because it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about it, and it's it's generally surrounded with angst and with a bunch of political BS,
mm,
and it's a really difficult conversation to be had. For me, even the fact that you're a woman is a more approachable route for me, because like I love the fact that I have daughters, because now I see how women are treated and that it's not always the same, and that they are extremely strong, they're extremely smart, talented, powerful, they can do whatever they want. And like I love having women on the podcast to be able to provide an additional platform to empower other women and obviously other people in general. But being able to navigate that narrative with a black person as well is like I don't know how to do that all the time. And within our space, it's really difficult because it's almost non-existent.
Okay, let me let you guys in on a secret. I'm that black friend. Okay. Seriously. You don't I like being that I don't like being the token, but I'm okay being that black friend. Like it doesn't make me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I understand where you're coming from. Um, because I had to have so many of these conversations in 2020. I mean, 90% of my friends are not black.
Yeah.
So it's okay for me to like say stuff to them and not to make them feel uncomfortable, but you guys don't have to feel uncomfortable with me. Like you won't offend me unless you call me out of my name.
Yeah.
But if you're like, okay, like I don't know. Like you don't know what you don't know,
Mm,
but you do have the power now to change that by having children.
mhm,
Because I see where it starts because my own children have to deal with racism from their schoolmates and their classmates. So it's I'm having these conversations with these other parents. And yeah, I do ask. I'm like, do you have black friends? Have you ever had anybody of color over your house? And when they tell me no, and I said, well, why would you expect your children to know how to treat children of color? If you are not setting an example, you set examples in other ways. Be polite, say please, thank you, don't run around at the dinner table, respect your elders, but you never show them how to interact with people who don't look like them. And then you wonder why I'm calling you, asking you why your child called my child the N-word and where they heard it.
mhm,
And that the interesting is thing is that like there's a point in a child's life, right, when they're first born and they're babies and they don't distinguish between black and white. Like I remember being at the airport and my daughter's being very young and just like crawling up to a black girl and just playing with her, and there's no distinguishing that girl's any different from them. And then as you grow older and you're surrounded by different things and you speak to different people and you interact with different people, or you are a family that doesn't interact with a lot of black people, then they start creating this image and this perception. Like I don't feel that we're born with that. And I guess the difficult thing for me is how to navigate that, and it being a tough topic to touch on, and it being a difficult conversation, which it just shouldn't be, but that's how things have gotten. And it was something within this podcast that I wanted to touch on, and it's how are we going to start this conversation, where's this going to go? um and I did really want to touch on like what it's like for you in the industry doing what you're doing and experience what you're doing, what challenges that presents, and has that open doors, has that closed doors for you? What's that look like for you? And it just comes down to the fact that, like you said, I don't know. I have a small understanding of how women are treated because I now have daughters, but I can't fully understand that because I'm not a woman. But I do have somebody who's close to me that I can now see how they are treated and how they engage with other people.
It's it a smart person would have not chosen this profession,
Yeah.
you know? Um it
why
has
do you say
it,
that?
because it's not a cakewalk, right? So
But let me pause you. Is it supposed to be?
it's not supposed to be a cakewalk, but if you
There's
have
easier paths that you could have chosen.
there's easier paths, right?
I know, but going back to something you said earlier, it's like, but is that the life that we're supposed to live?
Not everybody,
Everyone, like,
but
and this goes back to a conversation Tyler and I have had, and I've had with Ken here. It's like, it's so interesting to me that people of all colors, like, choose to be on this planet and do nothing.
right,
And
it's a
and
personal
and and
choice.
literally just choose to waste their life away. And I think one of the conversations was revolving around, like, people that just, like, that they literally wake up and they choose to do contribute 0 to the society, and it's like, "You're here." Like, what, like, you have so much opportunity, and me personally, I try to remind myself of, like, when something's difficult or when I'm struggling with something, it's like, this isn't that bad. Like I could you could take everything away and I could restart, but you're like, it's never been, and I'm not comparing like me to anyone else, but like it's never been a cakewalk for me. But I don't think it should be. I think if I woke up and my life was easy, I would feel like my potential is not being reached.
Sometimes all you have to do is show up.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just show up.
Sure.
Yeah.
I have to show up and show out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I understand we all have our struggles.
Yeah.
Life is hard for everybody in different perspectives, but you can, I'll give you a couple of examples. Okay. I was at a trade show that I was invited to as an influencer. And as part of my job as an influencer, we had to go talk to different brands, cover them on social media. I walk into the booths. I read body language. I study neurolinguistics. Have to. And the look on people's face is looking at, why are you here? And the question, can I help you? Then I have to list my resume as to why I'm there and who I am before people engage with me. And I watch them soften as I start to talk. I'm like, oh yeah, I was on This Old House. I was on Restoration Road. I was on NBC. I was on an Emmy, and I'm just like, why am I doing this? But if you walked into that booth, they would not ask you that. Hey,
Yeah.
how's it going? What's your name? Or what are you
It's like,
working on? All
so
you have to do is
you have a
show.
flannel shirt on. Hey, you must know what you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I have to deal with that always. It doesn't matter that I've been on TV. I saw you have my boy Kevin on
Mm-hmm.
from Ask This Old House, from This Old House. I mean, we were on the same show, right?
Yeah.
But like, he walks into a place, they don't ask him 100 questions. I walk in, but he and I built the same thing together. And they're like, well, who are you? Why are you here?
And that's what I'm getting at, where it's like, it's so unrelatable to people other than you. Like that, I don't know what it's like, and I never will, and I will never understand. And it's so hard to breach that when you don't know what to do or how to help, or and if you think that it weren't that way, don't you just think there'd be more women in our, like, if it was just as easy, like, or if it was just the same experience that Nick and myself had, you'd have more women doing this, you'd have more Black women doing this. Like, there are barriers to entry that are different for you than there are for us. And it is extremely honorable for you to be doing what you're doing, and to speak to legacy and everything else. Like, there's a ton of girls and Black women and men who are going to see what you're doing and look up to you and make different decisions in their life based on what you're doing. Even I know you wanted to speak to your teaching and what you're doing with special needs students and students from out of this country, less underprivileged children, people who don't necessarily have access to what you are providing for them, and the difference that you're making. It really is going to impact a lot of lives.
I hope so. I hope you guys will be allies when you can for other people in whatever way that makes sense for your life. Seeking out diversity for the podcast, friends for your children, who you have around your children, what you allow them to watch on television, being intentional about it. Because if you truly want to help change this, it doesn't have to be a big movement on television or a protest. It starts with Nick and it starts with Tyler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy because it just needs to become normal. Like, the normal has to change, and it
And
doesn't have to be some
and
like
that's me being,
massive thing.
and that's like where my mind is at, where it's like I try to I I probably am naive in saying that, but it's like I I'm not very proactive when it comes to it, but I feel as though I'm accepting of all, and obviously that can certainly trickle to my down to my children, but that doesn't help proactively change it.
And also, you're probably an exception to the rule. Most people aren't necessarily like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to most people, but that's probably a fair assumption. I mean, the fact that what you said about your kids and having to call their parents and asking like where they learn this language, like that is heart wrenching, and it seems like we should be so much further away from that. You roll your eyes, but and again, like maybe I'm naive, and like we're in the city, we're in Boston. It's not it's not incredibly diverse. And it sometimes my wife and I talk about it, like we wish it was more. But our kids are in public school in Boston, and we know that they'll certainly have diversity in the public school in Boston, but it's not to a proactive level. Um, and it gives like this discussion gives me a lot to think about, but relating it back to what you do for work, and you know earlier you were talking about involving your kids with your work. What I would simplify in saying is that you started as a maker, but is it fair to say that now you are a maker by trade, but your full-time job is, I don't want to use the word, like the word is influencer, like to be an influencer in the space, to, not only bring diversification to the space, but just to be part of that maker community, and influence people to get into the space. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean, I like to think of myself as a teacher. My job is
Mhm.
my job as a teacher. That's what pays my bills, is teaching, um, traveling, and teaching. And there's like 15 other streams of income under there. Uh,
Crazy how you have to make that happen, isn't it?
I know it
One
is.
is not enough.
It's not, but you know what? It's great for someone like me who gets bored easily.
Yeah.
Mm.
Working on like one project forever, I'm just like, yeah, I'm bored. I'm ready to move on. But I live for experiences, so I get to have all of these crazy, unique experiences that I would never have had otherwise. I'm going to Iowa next week for a television show. I would never go to Iowa. Like,
Yeah.
what is
What
in
show?
Iowa?
Are you allowed to tell us?
Yeah, the Woodsmith show.
Oh, cool. That's a,
Yeah, I'm really
have
excited.
you been to Iowa?
I've never been to Iowa.
If it's flat, there's a lot of corn.
I've never been to Iowa. I'll be in Boston in July.
I'll
You're gonna have
I'll
to hook
be
up with
here.
Nick.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Total Boat.
Oh, really?
What is it?
Oh, would you do epoxy with them?
Yeah, we're doing a build off.
Oh,
Resins?
total boat.
That's cool.
Yeah, we're building a boat.
Where are you
Really?
building the boat? Do you know?
Hold on, I can tell you.
Um, while you're looking that up, I want to dig into how you ended up teaching within your makerspace. And I kind of want to know um how you are as a teacher and as a mentor to these students.
Oh yeah. Um, so let's see. The teaching started, I want to say maybe 2017 at the makerspace, because I was there so much. And the makerspace manager at the time, oh, I'll be in Bristol. Is that near you?
Bristol, Rhode Island?
I thought it was Boston. Oh, I'll be flying into the Boston airport.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
then probably go to
yeah.
Bristol, Rhode Island. Yeah.
So anyway, I was there so much, and we had maybe about 250 members at the time. And we, like I said, we have woodshop 101 classes for people who are just starting. We go over the miter saw, table saw, bandsaw, drill press, get you acclimated to the tools, comfortable enough for you to come back within a week and use the tools on your own, make mistakes, because that's what learning is ultimately about. We learn from our mistakes. And I'm like really hesitant. I don't know enough to teach people, that imposter syndrome. I don't know enough to teach people how to use these tools. I was never formally trained. I'm pretty much self-taught. I didn't go to any classes. I can't even say I watched that many YouTube videos, to be honest with you. And I said, sure, I'll do it. So I taught this class. I think it was like a Thursday night. And if you've ever had a moment in your life where your soul was just flooded with joy and gratitude, maybe it was the birth of your child, maybe it was graduation from school, but that night something awakened inside of me that I didn't know was there. And I said, oh my gosh, I love teaching.
What was it about that? Was it the people who you were teaching? Was it the reception that you received? Was it just a bigger picture?
I think it was the bigger picture. Um, I was giving someone else a piece of what I was passionate about. I
Yeah.
knew that I loved making. I knew that I loved using power tools, but I was able to share that with someone else. And that to me is the greatest gift, is to share what you have, whatever it is you have, right? I didn't give people money. I didn't give them things. I gave them something intangible, right? I gave them confidence to use these tools. Because most people said, "Oh, they're all older than me. I'm afraid to use the table saw." I'm here to take the fear out of that for you. And I think with my style of teaching, which has developed over time, is I'm not going to talk over your head or make you feel dumb for not knowing what a kerf is or a dado stack, right? Because my goal is to build your confidence. I don't make fancy tables, but I can teach you how to make your own fancy table. And I have to be okay with that. So, I'm teaching these adults in the evening. I'm leaving my own family to go teach these adults to do something that I just really enjoy doing. And then I started teaching kids, and I thought that I was in love with teaching, but I'm a big like energy filled person. But the amount of like energy in the workshop when I get to teach young people, especially little girls, how to use tools to push that step stool up to the miter saw, ask them, can I put my hand on top of their hand? And just the feeling of a child using a miter saw for the first time, nothing ever replaces that feeling. And I get emotional still, like when everyone does it, because I'm like, this little girl's probably been told that she can't. Let dad do it. Let your brother do
Yeah.
it. And now I'm just like, girl, you're a boss. We fist bump, we high five. And all I want them to say is, I got it. Right. So by the second or third cut, they're like, I got it. And I'm
Do
seeing,
you
go ahead.
do you feel that the fear of not knowing enough or not being a professional within this field, you said that you're apprehensive to stand up in front of people and teach. Did that dissipate when you realized that you weren't necessarily responsible for every I being dotted and every T being crossed, as much of it instilling these values and principles within people, right? Where it's like, hey, maybe I don't have all the information correct, but I'm teaching them confidence and I'm teaching them responsibility and work ethic. Did some of that fear about not being good enough or being an imposter dissipate at that point?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always preface my class with saying, I don't know everything, but I'm going to teach you everything that I do know.
Yeah, because I think that so many people, with respect to what we spoke about earlier, like so many people will not share what they know for fear of being wrong or because they don't know enough. And at the end of the day, it's not necessarily about the information that you're providing, especially with these kids and who you're teaching, as much as helping them grow as a person.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what it's about. And keeping in mind that no matter how much I know or they know, I still know more than what they know, right? I
Hmm.
still have something to offer. I still have something to give. And I hope and pray that everybody gets something out of the classes that I teach. I mean, the makerspace was only the beginning, and I started sharing it on social media, and then it just started to grow from there. Then I started getting calls from schools all over the country to teach classes and do it on television. So it was the best case scenario for me, that I think people said, okay, here's something that's not traditionally done by women. Here's a young Black mom doing it, and she's comfortable with children, because a lot of people who are teachers still are not comfortable teaching children.
Hmm.
Right. But I think the fact that I have a child in every stage in my life, I've got a teenager, I've got a middle schooler, I've got elementary age school kids. So I know how to deal with children, um, and relate to them. I know there's going to be one that's not going to listen, one whose parent just made them come, and the other one who's like, oh, yeah, I used to drill before. I built the house last year with my
I
dad.
got this.
I'm like, okay, well, then you go help Sally. Okay. You go help. Um, but I want everybody to leave with something. And it's not just kids. It's with adults. I spent a week in Baskerville, North Carolina at Penland School of Craft. And I mean, I had surgeons in my class. We built shaker tables. And it was probably the most immersive experience I've ever had, um, teaching people. I mean, they spend a lot of money to come to these classes, so I want them to get something. We were in the shop till 11 o'clock every night. And, when you find that one thing that you want to do with the rest of your life, you just do it, right? Because we get excited about new ventures. We're like, oh my gosh, this looks so cool. I'm going to be a motorcycle driver or something. And then after a week, that excitement fades and you're like, oh, it was a moment in time. I know that I found my place. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I can only think of like 2 or 3 times. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do this. But all those other years, I'm like, this is what I plan to do with the rest of my life in some form or facet, is to empower, teach, and build confidence in the wood shop. However I can do that, if that's on a podcast, if that's on television, if it's in a magazine, if it's on the radio, if it's with brand content, if it's with being a face in the space or a speaker, whatever, I'm here for it.
Do you think that you said earlier that you feel you were hired because you were just always in this space? Is that a cop out, or do you feel that they hired you for another reason? Because I don't buy it. I mean, that's easy to say, yeah, like I was just always there, so they offered me a job. But I would say that you had to possess something that somebody saw that they felt you were a good fit.
Um, yeah. I mean, I feel like I absorb energy, but I feel like I give off that same energy, and people feel that when they're around me. I think you might be able to say that from when you met me,
Sure.
that you felt my energy. Um, that just by watching me work, you feel something, you sense something, and you're like, I don't know what it is, but I like her.
Yeah.
And that just comes from like a deep place of having this true passion and this true love that emanates without me having to say anything. So yeah, people saw me screw boards together, but I never I can't say I built anything fancy, those first couple of years while I was there, but I was proficient at the table saw. I knew how not to get hurt. Even though, we all have accidents sometimes still, but we know why those accidents happen, and maybe we didn't take the proper steps to prevent them. So
Um,
yeah, people watch.
and it's called the Decatur
Mm-hmm.
makers. Is that
Decatur, Decatur makers. Decatur's a city in
yeah,
Georgia.
and I know that you've been along enough to see that grow tremendously. Do you feel responsible, or did you have a big part in the inclusivity of this space? Like when you first joined, did you feel as diverse and as open and as accepting of everyone when you first got there? Is that something that you were intentional about changing?
Um, it was not diverse when I first joined, but I told the executive director at the time, that we were going to work on diversity, which we have done extensively. We've hired someone to do training in DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. We've been intentional about who's on the board. When we first started the board of directors, I was the only person of color on the board, but there wasn't that many people to choose from. And then the next board, I think we had 3 people. And this current board, I think we probably have 5. So it's growing leaps and bounds. So I made 2 promises when I joined. I said, I'm going to make Decatur makers nationally known, and I'm going to make sure that we diversify this place. And I'm not going to take complete responsibility because it wasn't just me, but I will say that I had a huge hand in it. As far as making Decatur makers nationally known, being on, there were two things. I've done a lot of filming at Decatur makers, and I thank them.
Hold on, Char. I'm just gonna pause you. I think your mic might be coming unplugged a little bit.
Okay.
It's
How's
just starting
that?
to.
Is that better? Are you able to hear me? Still static?
Yeah, Tyler, you hear that, right? It's not just on my end.
I thought it was my end. I was messing with my headphones right now
Yeah.
to try and fix it.
Okay.
It's just like it's like crackling, and I don't want.
You might be able to unplug it and plug it back in.
Yeah.
I thought that was on my end.
So did I.
My cord always like gets loose and then doesn't. It kind of cuts out. You might have to go into your settings and.
How's that?
Good.
That's better? Okay.
Yeah.
What was I saying?
So you were saying that you wanted to make it nationally known and diverse.
So there were 2 key moments that I think really helped put the makerspace on the map. Radio stations. Some radio stations have group chats where they present a question to you and you call in, right? They say, oh, Johnny's having a problem with Sarah because he thinks Sarah's cheating. What do you guys think? I don't really care what goes on in other people's lives. You just listen and go, that person's stupid. Why would you ask a radio station about your personal business? So I'm listening to the radio one day, and this is a popular radio station. I switch between like 10 different stations in the morning. This particular one is like the #1 radio station for like R&B. So their audience is largely Black. So husband calls in and he says, yeah, so my wife quit her job about 6 months ago to become a social media influencer, and she's not making any money, and we're starting to dip into our savings. And I told her she needs to go back and get a job. All I saw was red. I'm driving and I like dialed the number to the radio station. Can't believe this husband. The phone rings and they're like, B103. And I said, that husband should be ashamed of himself. I said, I am a social media influencer. I quit my job 8 years ago, and it took me about 5 years before I made any money. And he needs to support his. I'm like going off, right? And they go, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a woodshop teacher. They said, what? I said, a shop teacher. They said, hold on.
We thought you were taking pictures of your feet or something.
I know, right? No, don't you see me on OnlyFans with the feet pics? I'm pulling in bank. So they're like, hold on, we need to talk to you some more. So they put my little bit on the air, right? And I'm rushing home to tell my husband, babe, turn on the radio. I was on the radio. So I start talking to them, right? And they're like, you do what now? They're like, seriously? They're like, we have to come check it out. So turns out one of the boss that I told you about that let me borrow the drill, he's friends with the guys at the radio station. So I had the 2 people at the radio station, their spouses, and my friend come to Decatur Makers. We did a class together. We made charcuterie boards. And then they invited me on the radio station to present them and talk about the makerspace. And we had a open build night the following night, and so many people showed up.
That's cool.
We heard about this place on the radio and came, right? So the membership starts climbing a little bit because people don't know about this place. And then this old house happened. And the number of people that joined the makerspace after they saw Decatur Makers on this old house, it was almost too much for us to handle because we're doing so many like intake meetings and everything. And I said, I made a promise to this space. I didn't know how I was going to do it at the time, but I know what making has done for me, from like a mental health standpoint. And I know that it could help other people find that outlet, especially like during the pandemic. I didn't realize like how much of a maker I was until like I couldn't make anything. I couldn't be closed for a while. And I'm just like, okay, not okay. If I don't make, I've got to make to be alive, right? So I've got to help other people, find their path and find their way. And the only way that I know how to do that is by having this outlet and this release, like through your hands and through your creative brain. So yeah, our membership has gone through the roof. We've been toying with the second space for a while, and I'm constantly talking about the makerspace. So there's so many people that come through Atlanta, they hit me up and they're like, Char, we want to check out the makerspace. So I'm like, I'll meet you there. So now I'm just sharing it with people all over
That's
the country,
cool.
all over the world. I had somebody from, gosh, where was he from? Jerusalem. A guy that I met at Workbench Conference, who wanted to start a makerspace. And he and I just like, it's so funny because my friends are like, you would never expect me to be friends with the people I'm friends with, but we just speak the same language. He's like a 50-year-old guy from Jerusalem. Um, and we just like started talking, and he looks into my eyes, I look into his eyes. It's just like my soulmate, my maker soulmate. And he's like, yeah, somebody was telling me about the space. And he like stayed 3 days later, and we hung out at the makerspace. There's like, a little cultural like barrier because he keeps sending me like DMs with hearts. So I don't know like what's going on there, but I'm like, yeah, okay, we're friends, but come on.
You give me
So,
a thumbs up.
right, I know, right? But I'm just happy that I'm using this platform to say, hey, start this makerspace. Let me show you how we did it. Let me show you what we're doing. And, you don't have to start like your friend. You don't have to start with all the equipment or all the pieces or all the people, but you do have to start somewhere. And this is 10 years of work.
Yeah.
So don't think this was overnight. Like people they'll scroll back through my social media and they'll go, oh, so we see, you've been doing this for 5. I said, try 20. I said, that's Instagram. I said, but this right here, you walk into my shop, which used to be a 2-car garage, not anymore. I don't know why people still call it the garage, my shop. And I'm like, this is a collection of 20 years of equipment, not like overnight. I built this and hoarded and bargained with my husband to park the car outside. So some
speaking
respect.
of which, obviously you're super passionate about this. You're super passionate about the maker space, that being another baby, so to speak. How do your husband and your kids, do you set enough time aside that they don't feel like they're backseat to this? No.
Of
So like
course.
how do they,
I'm kidding.
no, but like how do they do, it's really difficult. Like if you have a passion, you have a hobby, it's really difficult. And generally, and maybe I'll get yelled at for this, but I feel like it's the husband who's like always doing something. And then my wife, I'm like, I'm going to go ride dirt bikes. And my wife's like, all right, I'll watch the kids. But like in this, you're very passionate about something that's taking you away from your family, from your husband, for your kids. And I understand you bring them with you as much as possible. But how do you navigate that where you have something in your life that pulls you so strongly and still ensuring that you're giving everyone the attention and the love that they need, while not only servicing yourself and your own needs?
I don't know how it happens, but you create space in your heart to love, all the people in your family. And it took me a while to figure out how to separate that. Like at home, I'm not the wood maven, I'm mommy. Um, so I don't talk so much about woodworking while I'm home with them. I don't make that the topic of every conversation. I mean, it comes up.
Yeah.
So one of my sons, he's really into finance. So he goes, how much are they paying you for this? He wants to know if I'm getting paid. All he cares about is getting paid. I'm like, yeah, they're paying me. He's like, is that fair? I'm like, yeah, that's a good price. He's like, okay. My husband and I have been together for 21 years.
Did you get
So
married when you were like 9?
it was one of those arranged child marriage bride things. I don't really want to talk about it, but so he's seen like the evolution of Char, right? Um, and any, I think, decent human or partner would celebrate that, right? And he is super supportive and super proud of who I've become, because I basically had nothing when I left my job, and then I
Yeah.
created this like career,
I'm
right?
sure you're such a much better version of yourself now than you were when you were working for that job that was just sucking the life out of you.
Oh my gosh, yes. I had to put on high heels and like makeup and dresses and oh, no, please no. Give me my boots and my Carhartt leggings and we out. Um so
Wait,
so
Carhartt? Does Carhartt really have leggings?
yeah, and they're like literally the most comfortable pants ever. There's like
Nick
8 pockets on them too.
Nick's gonna get a pair.
Yeah,
I
oh yeah,
might.
you should totally get a pair because
Right now,
bottom.
he's a Lululemon guy.
Oh my gosh,
Maybe we can put him in
Lululemon's
Big,
a vert.
big Lululemon.
mom. But he's super supportive, and I make sure. I think like the hardest part, being in a marriage and also being an only child is speaking to your spouse about these things, right? You just want to make decisions in a silo. Like, I got a deal. I'm out. I'm going for a week. Good luck, buddy. But it's like, hey, does this work for you? He's like, yeah, go. Because he's seen firsthand what has happened as a result of my hard work. And he's like, okay, if this is your job, then this is your job. And he's okay with it. Um, my kids, I make sure that each of them has something that they're passionate about. I mean, they're all very young, so their passions will change over time, but I want them to have their own lane. Like my oldest daughter, there was a brief period where I was trying to figure out this full-time maker thing. I started baking cakes as a request for like my kids who wanted these exquisite $500 cakes, and come on, I'm a maker. I'm like, oh my gosh, the Food Network, they have Spring Baking Championship. I'm like, I can make that cake. The first cake was horrible. It was like a Captain America cake with the whole can, and I make the whole can too big, and it just like literally smashed through the cake. That wasn't intentional. But then like I kept working at it, and then I was getting paid to make these like designer cakes, and then got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm a good maker and I'm a good baker, but I want to be great at one thing. And I said, I want to be a great maker. I gave all the baking stuff to my daughter. So she's the baker, I'm the maker. So she's passionate about that. And my son's like a musician. He plays the guitar. He likes to DJ. He likes to 3D print. The twins both play piano. They like gymnastics. Everybody has their thing that they're passionate about that they could do without mom. And when I'm home, I try to be mom, right?
Yeah.
So I try not to take school is out now, but I try not to take meetings after 3 o'clock. Sometimes it's unavoidable because when they're home, I want them to have access to me and not my attention be divided between me trying to post to Instagram and on a Zoom call and trying to finish up a project. It's like you have all of mommy. They'll grow up, they go, Mom was never home. She was always out in the shop. I mean, they'll probably tell you that anyway, but I'm very intentional about making space. And they'll tell you one thing, that their mom loves them very much. And I tell my husband every day I love him, and I give him a big hug and a big kiss and tell him how fine he still is. And um,
I gotta let my wife listen to this.
I do. I tell him every day how handsome he is, how lucky I am to have him, because he's a phenomenal dad and a great husband to stick by me while I figure this thing out in this weird space of woodworking where it's hard for me to be in his family. I mean, his brother works for SpaceX. He launches rockets into outer space. He has like 6 degrees. My husband has 5 degrees. My sister-in-law is a nurse. I mean, his parents, everybody there is like highly educated. So yeah, I felt a little weird about, being in their family because they're like, you're what? You do what? I don't get it, but I would invite them to like the sets, and then they go, okay, we kind of get it now. So I try to involve everybody, make everybody feel loved and feel special, and we laugh a lot. I am very, very, very silly.
That's good. I think you've hit all the key points on a successful family life, a successful marriage. Obviously, it's not as simple as that, but I do think being intentional and being present and making time for kids and husband is really important. And obviously, taking care of yourself as well, because I think that you bring the best version of yourself to the table if you feel emotionally and physically fulfilled in a relationship. And a lot of that ends up coming down on yourself and what you do on a daily basis to ensure that you are being fulfilled and you're doing things that challenge you and truly make you happy. As far as the podcast goes, what do you want your biggest takeaway for listeners to be? Like, what's the most important thing that or point that you really want to drive across? I know that we talked about a lot of serious stuff, a lot of fun stuff, a lot of your past, but what's the most important takeaway from this?
Leaps of faith and manifestation. If there is something that you aspire, that you want in your heart, that you want to do, you have to go after it with every fiber of your being. There will be obstacles. There will be people that are not in your corner, that will not support you, but you move forward no matter what, with all the confidence and strength that you could find, all that you have. And I promise, I assure you, if you keep working at it, it will pay off one day.
That is much easier said than done.
You're right.
You know that, right?
I understand that. And I hope that some of this podcast can be a testament to getting the life that you want. It may not be the way that you planned it. I said, I remember the year because I was pregnant with my second child. It was 2012. And I remember having a conversation with someone. And when you're in the office and you're griping about your boss and how you don't want to be at work, and I remember us having a specific conversation about what would you do if you didn't have to work for money. And I remember saying, I know that I was born to build things with my hands. And I kept having this conversation in my mind about how I would tell my husband how I wanted to leave my job, but I never got a chance to have that conversation because life forced its way out. I told you about that horrible year in 2014. All of that, I believe, happened because I said, all I want to do is wake up, put on sweats, and make sawdust. And that is exactly what I get to do. I get to wake up. I have every single tool I would ever imagine. Most of them I did not pay for. They were given to me. Not given to me to say, make content, given to me. Not cheap tools. We're talking Festool. We're talking Avid CNCs. And I get to be in this unique position where I could build stuff, I can teach people, I could fly all over the country for free, meet people that I never thought I would have the opportunity to meet, do things that I never thought I would be able to do. But it took a long time, 20 years for me to get to this point, from me making that platform bed in my apartment in 2003. It took a while, but I never gave up on that vision or that passion or that drive that I want to make things. There's been ups, downs. There's been brokenness, sadness, disagreements. Leaving my children is not easy when I travel. I'm very close to them. It hasn't all been roses, but it has definitely been worth it because I am one of the first in this modern day and age Black female shop teachers.
It's so cool. I mean, I appreciate everything that you've said, everything that you shared. I appreciate your most recent sentiments about manifesting what you want in life and going for it. I'm at a point right now, my family is where we're making some changes to do things, and it's scary and it's outside of our comfort zone. And it's like, if we don't do this, when are we going to have an opportunity to do so?
Yeah.
So that's definitely fitting right now at this point in my life. And I'm trying to get that easier said than done mentality out of my head and just be like, roll with it. So I definitely appreciate that. I appreciate what you're doing. Obviously, meeting you was great. Coming on the podcast, it's been enlightening and inspiring to say the least. I really, it's so cool to see what you're doing. I love getting strong women on, women who are not afraid to speak. Like I said, I have two daughters, and I just like I love people empowering other people, especially when they're empowering other women. It just like I love it. So I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, I second what Tyler said in the beginning. It's like, and unfortunately, I didn't get to meet you in Indiana, but your energy is awesome, and it's clear, like, all like, through and through, that you're doing what you love, and I love the fact that you say, "I wanna just wake up, put sweats on, and make sawdust," um, 'cause it just it's so simple, but you talk about it in such a heightened way that you can tell that you're doing what you were put here to do, and you're making a huge difference and a huge impact, and, the fact that, us having you on the podcast is helpful. Like, I love that, but I love the fact that you were just on the podcast and, you know, for the sake of being on the podcast.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate you guys for giving me this platform to share. It's what I love, and I hope somebody listening will say, you know what, it's time for me to take that leap of faith.
It's cool because a lot of our guests and our interviewees, they have a bigger agenda, and they have so much technical and business related information that they want to push across. And for you, it really is just passion, and it's service work, and it's helping other people. And it's just refreshing to have a conversation with somebody who's just like fucking pumped to be doing carpentry. Like it's really cool. And I can't thank you enough for coming on. But as a plug for yourself and for, I know you guys probably have the rooms filled right now, at your maker space, but where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram. My handle is Wooden Maven, WOODEN MAVEN. That's where I'm most active. And if you're in Atlanta or coming through Atlanta, stop by the Makerspace. We're decaturmakers.org or Decatur Makers on social media.
Yeah, even if you're from Jerusalem, just cut it out with the hearts.
Exactly. Slide through. Slide in the DMs.
Well, Shar, we appreciate your time, and like I said, everything that we were doing. It was a great conversation. I'd love to have you back on at some point.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
for
that'd be
sure.
super cool.
After I get my television show.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll come on set. We'll be your
Yeah,
cheerleaders.
that'll be fun. That'll be happening soon, hopefully.
Sweet.
Well,
Well,
thank you so much. We like Tyler said, we appreciate you being on, and I think that, I mean, if the I was gonna ask what the next step for you is, but if it sounds like it might be the TV show. That's what you're chasing down right now. So
Yeah, it might be the TV show. I've been working with an agent for a couple of years now
cool,
um, on that. So more to come from Char.
love it.